B-roll, take two. We are having a couple of technical difficulties. What else is new? Welcome to SonicFlare. I am your lovable host, Danny K. How's everybody doing today? Thank you for tuning in. As I have alluded on my great Instagram channel, in case you're not following it, please consider doing so at SonicFlare. I made an announcement that I would be joined by a very, very special guest of mine and a dear friend of mine, Ying Tan, who produced and reissued many, many of the records that you guys all know. And so it is with great pleasure that I would like to introduce you guys to Ying Tan. Ying, how are you?
Hey, Danny, how you doing? Good to be here. Good to see you.
Likewise.
I am doing fine. I've been stuck here in Singapore for almost 2 years. In fact, it will be 2 years in January of 2022 when I finally return to LA to hopefully attend the AudioCon audio show, which is being held in your part of LA, right? It's in Irvine.
That's right. Yeah,
Irvine,
yeah,
right.
Irvine. So, yes, yeah, you're right. AudioCon.
So, AudioCon, yeah.
Great
I believe,
name.
Fremer said he's going to be there. It was in his one of his recent analog plan. So I'll get to see people that I haven't seen for like over 2 years. Yeah, I usually run into people wherever, Munich, Exponent, whatever,
Yep.
So
one thing that's interesting is obviously, you're a little different in my opinion. I mean, we've known each other for what, 20 years now. And you're not like some of the others that are out in the spotlight all the time. You kind of keep a low profile. You kind of, stay a little bit in the background. And I think if probably for many of our viewers now that are joining or watching this is probably the first time that many get to hear you about you from you, and kind of get to meet you, which is really interesting, and no less that you are in Singapore and not even in the US.
Yeah, well, I think that actually goes back all the way to like, I kind of got into this thing mainly just doing mail order vinyl, and then I met Mike Hobson and we started Classic together back in 93, 94. And for the first few years, it was a pretty fruitful partnership. And I Mike was more comfortable being the lead guy. And I just stayed in the background and did the kind of the office, the management, the logistics, all that kind of stuff. And Mike was, we did a lot of press conferences together, but, he was basically the face of Classic.
The front man.
And I was happy with that arrangement. It didn't bother me, but we founded it together,
which in and of itself is crazy. I mean, Classic Records, it's like an institution in the world of the reissue business.
Yeah, it is now. When we started it, I have to say, it was really kind of a crazy thing that we started. We had very limited capital. We were very fortunate back in 93, 94, when we went to see the senior business affairs people over at BMG. BMG was not part of Sony then, it was BMG RCA. And, we went in for this meeting and we said, we want to license all these living stereotypes, right? I'm telling you, man. That
sounds so hilarious.
I somehow suspect they were ready to, put in a call to like, to the guys with the
straight jackets.
Yeah, but anyway, it's totally different. In those days, you could walk in, talk to guys for a couple of hours, and they'd license stuff to you.
That's hilarious.
For us nowadays, I don't know if people are aware. So I left Classic in the late 90s. Hobson and I split up. He kept the company. I went on to found Groove Note Records. I actually did some projects with a company called Alto Analogue, which is long gone, but many of the items that we produce and release, like that Argenta box set that you bid on a while back, they were all products of Alto Analogue. But then I founded GrooveNode, and that was mainly to do, I kind of wanted to do original stuff as opposed to reissues. But late 2000, oh man.
It's okay. I'm just going to switch.
So I keep going? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
keep going. Yeah.
2008.
Yes. Okay, there we go.
Yeah. So in late 2008, I got involved with a company called Original Recordings Group, ORG. And so ORG is still functioning, as is GrooveNode. Those are the two things I do. GrooveNode does original stuff, and ORG does all the reissue stuff. But the thing is, contrast to my start at Classic in 93, 94, it is like squeezing blood from a stone to get titles licensed from the major labels, because they want to do it themselves, or they've got really, really well-capitalized companies like my good friend and competitor, Chad Casson, who can throw big bucks at them and acquire, you know, major titles like Miles Davis Kind of Blue and stuff like that. You know, for org, it's really difficult. Now, we do retain the reissue, the 45 RPM reissues. We are still the one company that does 45 RPM reissues of those Diana Krall titles, and that looks to continue in the future. But you know, beyond that, we have licensing requests that have been sitting at Uni and all the other big labels. I don't want to say months, I want to say years, okay? And we have to keep chasing them up, you know, and personnel change, you know, people come and go, and you have to start from scratch again with somebody new. And this all takes a lot of time, you know, and it is also an issue with, which I'm kind of jumping ahead here a little because I'm going to talk a bit about the LP production cycle has gotten crazy. Because everybody's wants to be in this market because it's profitable. Profitable. It's strong. There's definitely demand, and it's growing demand. But the turnaround times now, Danny, it's insane. Okay. I mean, we press exclusively at RTI in Camarillo, and the latest updates we've got is it's 35 weeks. That is
35 weeks.
That is 35 weeks from all parts being there. That does not include the day you deliver your lacquers and then you wait 2, 3, maybe even 4 months to get your test pressings, okay? And then you've got to assess those test pressings. I don't believe in doing it on my own. I send them out to other people whose hearing I trust. I send stuff out to you.
Sure.
You know? And you know, it's getting really crazy. You know, people are putting in new titles, and the timelines are just like a year and a half now. Okay. And this is all over because I was getting like really desperate. So I asked my German distributor, hey, you know, what's the turnaround time in, you know, Palace and Optimal, the two big audio, you know, the two big German pressing plants that have radio audiophile reputations. And he said 8 months. So
that's insane.
It's insane, isn't it? You know,
that's crazy. Do you feel that? I mean, and this is obviously always the tricky question. Do you feel that the part of the blame, I guess, lies within the pressing plants, that they are taking on more and more clients that they know they can't really service in time? And obviously there's a finite amount of pressing plants out there. And so it's kind of like Stoughton. I mean, I just spoke with Shane from Intervention Records, and he was telling me that, you know, Stoughton is now backlogged, you know, 8 months to get jackets done.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want the long answer or the short answer?
The long answer.
I'll give you the short answer. Michael Fremen. He's been evangelizing vinyl for decades. I ascribe this entire problem to him. All right, it's in his lap entirely. But to get to the long answer, that, you know, COVID has accelerated and aggravated this whole problem. Okay, that's partly why it's been building up for a while. You know, with the growth in the vinyl market, the desirability for vinyl, especially with newer and younger generations. Okay, I think this is where the major labels, and once they get into the act, they can go to the pressing plants with these. I can't imagine what the PO for that latest Adele would have been. 50,000, 100,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I read about some of these box sets that are announced by Fremont on Analog Planet. So there's some kind of David Bowie box set. Is it like 11 LPs or something, or 7 LPs? And they do like, I don't know, 10,000, 20,000. That's going to tie RTI up for like a month or two, and they're not going to stop pressing that. Yeah. And
they, frankly, I mean,
intervention.
I was just going to say, I mean, a major label shows up to a pressing plant. They're like, hey, we're going to do David Bowie. What's the pressing plant going to say? Yeah, you know what? Let me hold off with that. There's the little guys I'm going to take care of first.
Look, it's I think there was a New York Times article recently about how the success of vinyl has created a lot of problems. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think they quoted Rick Hashimoto, the foreman at RTI, and he says, he's like, he said the real problem of this huge explosion in vinyl demand is it's really putting pressure and shutting out smaller labels. Because listen, we've been at this. So when Classic started, I remember Mike and I drove up to RTI. This was in the winter of '93. We had just acquired the licenses for all those living stereos, and we had a meeting with Don and Rick, the two senior guys over at RTI. And, it was like in those days, you could get a title pressed in a couple of weeks if you had all your parts.
Crazy.
Okay? Even 3-4 years ago, you could get something in 2 to 3 months. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
This has started getting first, it was 2 months and 3 months and 4 months. Like I said, the latest news is that it's 35 weeks. It's really, really gotten worse and worse.
Yeah.
So,
wow. Given that you travel internationally, obviously, and you're speaking to us from Singapore today. I mean, is that really? Do you see the same sort of market development internationally as well? It's not just a US based thing.
It's definitely global.
Yeah.
But it varies a little bit from country to country. Okay. Sure. So I would say, obviously, outside of the US itself, there's strong vinyl market in Europe, particularly UK and Germany. There's pretty strong market in Hong Kong, Japan.
Yeah.
It's interesting, I mean, Singapore's not too bad, but for vinyl in this, our immediate neighbor, Malaysia, I think it's a much stronger vinyl market than Singapore. But it's growing everywhere. It's really and it's, in terms of the international effect of this demand, every pressing plant in the world is feeling the same pressure on it. Operational capacities are just at the max everywhere. And as soon as somebody, I'll give you a little anecdote, my Thai distributor, he found a pressing plant in Japan, he had an album he wanted to press, and he was saying, wow, I can get this done in 5 weeks. I said, really? 5 weeks? Now, it's really expensive.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 times as expensive as RTI. But Bangkok's a lot closer to Japan than LA is. It's completely impossible for me because I'd have to ship all my jackets over there and have all the product shipped back to the US, So, but it was like, wow, that's amazing, And the thing is, he started talking to people about it, and I guess word got out because now that plant has a 5-month waiting list, So my rule of thumb now, Danny, is if I find like some super secret little independent pressing plant that does good product, I'm not telling anybody.
Anyone.
Okay? I am, my lips are sealed, man.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You know, which of course kind of brings up the other point that, you know, throughout this just incredibly surging demand on one hand, and then, you know, the capacity to print and press these records on the other hand, I'm seeing actually a lot of these little guys come up that are literally showing up out of nowhere, so to speak, with their own, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 presses, and they're trying to get in and, you know, make a buck or two, right?
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, but I mean, you know, of course, the question with those guys then becomes, you know, you've got someone like RTI, you've got something like QRP or Palace or Optimal, you know, they are a known quantity versus the new guy that shows up with, you know, 2 or 3 presses, and you're like, well, I don't know if I can really lane in on him and recognize the fact that, you know, hey, yes, maybe he'll be able to do it in, you know, 2 months, but what am I getting?
Yeah, I think that's a key issue is, you know, what guarantee of quality. You know, I mean, I'm been with RTI since my classic days. That's 93, 94. We're talking like close to 30 years with them, all right? So yeah, I know everybody there. They know who I am. You know, I go there, I see the people, you know, yeah. So it's totally different if you go to a new place and you're a new customer. Yeah. You know, they will not necessarily be as good. That's number one. You know, the only way to really know is to try it. Yeah, you got to send some lacquers and ask them to cut some test pressings. And, you know, okay, so the other thing is, when we started, Mike and I, the whole thing was, you know, we didn't really know anything about making LPs back in 93, 94. So the philosophy was just hire the best people and let them do it. Okay. Yeah. So, you know, so as a result, you know, we didn't just go to like RTI for the pressing. You know, we went to Bernie Grunman to do all our cutting, and I've been with Bernie for nearly 30 years as well. So, you know, I'd have to get Bernie to cut me a set of lacquers and send them to some new pressing plant somewhere and see, you know, how the quality turned out. You know, as of now, I don't really think I'm going to do that yet, because it's not like going to Optimal or Palace, okay? Those have long-standing, well-established quality reputations, okay? For my market, I understand, you know, I'm not a major label. I'm not even a big indie. I'm just a small audiophile label. My market is essentially audiophiles, okay? Yeah. So I cannot really take, you know, I can't roll the dice and go to some little place because they're cheaper or they can be faster, you know, because, you know, it takes a long time to acquire a reputation for quality. It doesn't take much to ruin it, right? So I mean, the only one, okay, so let me backtrack a bit. So ORG has pressed some stuff at Gotta Groove, okay? But, you know, the whole reissue thing with the major labels is sometimes they offer you a variety of pressing plants. Yeah. So I think when we did, what was it? We did a couple of Rhino, or was it BMG, Sony BMG titles over at Gotta Groove, and that was because, you know, they were offering Gotta Groove at the time, and so, you know, we ended up using them. But everything that Groove Knot has done, everything has been at RTI. Yeah. And you know, I know some people have had their problems there, but I haven't. You know, the scheduling thing is totally different. You know, it's not a quality thing. They'll always back me up. If I have a problem with a batch of records, I send them a, you know, defective, and they'll tell me, you know, what the problem was. You know, so I'm okay with that.
You know, one of the other things that keeps popping up and that people always ask me about when I do these types of videos and interviews is, you know, with this incredibly booming industry, what we started seeing as of, you know, a couple of years ago is like these absolutely crazy uber deluxe editions coming out from companies like ERC. You know, there's yet another label coming out of Austria now. I just read it like a week ago on Fremer's blog. They're going to be doing something super special with very bespoke jackets and all that. What's your take on all that? I mean, you know, obviously,
You know,
vinyl is vinyl, right?
yeah,
But
it to me, it's just symptomatic of the current state of the economy. You know, I mean, it's
yeah,
like you look at it, the hardware side, okay?
yeah,
$250,000 turntable. Actually, I think that Tech DOS is 450,000,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And as somebody just announced, a $560,000 turntable, and you know, $100,000 speakers are nothing unusual anymore. You
yeah,
know, $20,000 cartridges. So it's not unusual to see this kind of concept make
yeah.
its way to the software. You know, it's just following where the hardware is going. You know, so
That's a great point.
had chats with people from a few years ago where, you know, I think it was during the previous these shows that were held in Irvine. You know,
Yeah,
one of the last ones that was held there, where I think I brought a lacquer or Mingus or that Blood, Sweat and Tears self-titled
yeah,
record that we released on org. And I played it in the Vandersteen room, which would be Vandersteen Audio Research with a state-of-the-art front end from AJ Conti and basses.
yeah,
And, you know, Richard was pretty blown away. And he kept coming in and said, why don't you guys put out lacquers? And I said, well, you know, for a start, they only last, there's a limited number of plays you can get from them.
yeah,
And then they start to drop off. And if you've got a really good stylus and a perfectly set up tone arm and a state-of-the-art front end, you know, you could probably get quite a few plays out of it. I know that Peter Lederman of Soundsmith, I gave him a lacquer once, and he said he's played it like 20, 30 times. It's quite unusual, okay? But the other thing is, you know, there's no economies of scale with a lacquer. Bernie has to sit there, cut them in real time. And now he has two lathes there, and you could probably put them in slave. But then one of those is powered by a solid state cutting amp,
yeah,
and one's powered by a tube cutting amp, okay?
yeah,
So then, you know, I suspect, you know, audiophiles being audiophiles, you'd have a lot of demand for the lacquer that was cut on the tube amp, and
yeah.
I'd be sitting on these unsold lacquers that were cut on the solid state amp, okay? So, you know, I told Richard, I said, hey, you know, are you willing to pay $2,500 per set? And he said, yeah. But you know what, Danny? I look around, I look at ERC and stuff like that. Hey, ERC can take all the time and trouble they want with all their vintage equipment, blah, blah, blah. No record they ever produced is going to sound as good as a lacquer, okay?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you want to hear a record, a really good master tape,
Yeah,
recorded by a really good engineer, short of actually getting a dub of that master tape.
yeah,
The closest you're going to get to it is with a lacquer.
yeah,
So to just round up the answer to your question, I don't think I'm going to do these kind of ERC, you know, these $500
yeah.
packages. I am going to go and do a direct to disc sometime.
Fantastic. That's
Yeah.
awesome. You know, which kind of pivots to the next sort of big topic, obviously, which is, you know, sound quality, right? And I mean, obviously, you know, we're talking about an audiophile market, or we're talking about a market that is geared towards audiophiles. And, you know, perfect example. I mean, you spoke of, you know, short of having master tapes, I happen to have a lovely Groove Note master tape of Vanessa Fernandez right in front of me, right? And I mean, you know, look, I always tell people, yeah, the record, as good as it sounds, you put this sucker on and it's just a whole different experience, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and that's the 15 IPS, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, you know, the master's at 30, you know, and, you know, so I know there are people who think 15 IPS, you know, a little bit better bass response maybe.
Yeah.
But, you know, 30 IPS has got a quality to it that I think is just incredible. But I agree with you 100%, okay? And I notice, you know, there's people who will say, well, you know, you got a really good front end, you can get really good LP playback, and undoubtedly you can, okay? Now, so somebody who's got a like $100,000 turntable with $100,000 preamp and phono stage and 250,000 amps and $500,000 speakers, yeah. Okay, I agree. I'll put a well-aligned, something like the ATR 102 I got from the guys at Bernie Grunman, and which they hot rodded for me. It's playback only, and that's some kind of custom cable by George Cardas that goes straight from the playback head right into the preamp, okay? And you put that in the front of that system with the $100,000 turntable and the $100,000 preamp and amps and, you know, incredible speakers, and you'll have a mind-blowing experience. Okay. All right. Yeah, you heard my system in LA with modest $4,000 speakers, and with some of those master tapes, you know, it sounds incredible.
It's always magical. I mean, it's you know, you bring that up, and I do remember fondly. We had, like, this was a couple of years ago, we had that all-night session, if you remember, where you were playing tape after tape after tape, and I was just like, wow. And we'd put the record on, which is phenomenal, right? Preston RTI.
And that wasn't exactly, you know, that was a Bassist Gold debut, which had set up with AJ's help. And, you know, it was a good turntable. It may not have been the very, you know, that there are other bassist tables, you know, the Inspiration and all the others that are, you know, but it was not a slouch front end. But, you know, it still sounded damn good. And one thing I will say that I that was a bit quirky for me was, unlike a lot of people who have tape playback in their systems, I don't use any kind of tape pre-stage, okay? I'm totally passive, all right? So I ran that. So I got Benno, who's the tech guy at Bernie Grumman's. He came, helped me set up the thing. So that hot-rodded ATR 102. So it's playback straight from so there's a little short run of cable, goes straight into the passive, more than enough gain, and then straight into the big amps. And, you know, like I said, even on those, and I've got to give a shout out to Prana Fidelity here, because those $4,000 speakers he does, they punch way above their weight.
100%. Yep.
And but you know, that's really, you know, when I hear people say, you know, that yeah, well, I think you do have to make some distinctions with tape. I think most of the tapes that are floating out there are of dubious provenance. Okay, unless they come from a real record company, and there's lots of them. You can go to all these websites. I know that there's a load of them. Even recording the music, RTM. If you go to the RTM home site, I think it's rtm.com. They have a little, ironically, actually, Groove Note's not listed on that website. I have to tell them that we do tape, you know, releases. But there's like 20 labels there listed who produce, you know, dubs, and of course they're all expensive. But you know, most of the tapes that are floating on the internet, you have no idea. And there are a lot of dubious sounding tapes, and the title also tells you. I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, "Oh, yeah, I got a safety master for Dark Side of the Moon." I say, "Yeah, really, sure." You know, it's like people who come to you and say, "You know, I have a 1945 double magnum of Mouton Rothschild." I say,
right. No, what's funny is I did a video on it was called, I think it was called The Truth of Master Tapes, on Master Tapes.
I saw that. I saw that episode.
And you know, it bugs the heck out of me when people show up or people call me or whatever. And, oh, dude, I got this guy. He's got, the Beatles, a master tape dub. Should I get it? I'm like, no, don't. You're wasting your money. It's nonsense, right?
Yeah.
You're better off getting the copy at the record shop than spending $900 on this dubious copy of the Beatles. You're not gonna get that, right?
Yeah, you're better off looking for a really good pressing of the Beatles.
Exactly.
That
yes.
Case, so,
exactly.
The other thing I want to say is like I'm going to toot my trumpet here a little bit, is that with Groove Note, there's no production master intermediate stage. Okay, a lot of the tapes that are made, people make a production master. We run the original master. Okay, so
which is incredible.
Tape you get is a true second generation. It's true second generation. Okay, and because we're a fairly recent company, that first title we produced, the Jacintha Here's to Ben, is 97, 98. Our tapes, I'm not selling hundreds of thousands of copies. I'm not making loads and loads of, tens of thousands. Bernie cut that once for the 33 and 45 package that was the first release. And then about 10 years ago, he cut it again for the double 45. And we're still on the first mother, so
there's longevity built into your process, obviously.
As long as the tapes have not been abused or poorly stored, and those tapes only ever get played, they get dubbed or they get used to make a new master or a new lacquer. They hardly get played. Okay. They hardly get played. So they're all in really excellent condition. And so and even with the tapes, Bernie runs 2-3 machines at a time. So we don't really run those, even for the best selling ones. I doubt if we run them more than 5, 10 times at the most. So,
hey, look, the couple of tapes that I have from you are always a delight to listen to. And I strongly encourage the audience, if you have a tape machine, I strongly encourage you to spend that extra money and get the tape copy of Ying's catalog, what he has available, because it really is next generation sound quality compared to the records. One thing that I think kind of pivots us nicely. I have to say this interview session is fantastic because you're like almost reading my mind of where I want to go next, right? We had an interesting conversation a couple of years ago. You have a knack, I know just by seeing the records that you release, of discovering up and coming talent that, like Jacintha that you started with, obviously, Vanessa Fernandez. Now you have a brand new rising star, Aisyah, on the horizon, right? And one of the things that I think is fascinating that has come up a few times is that when I listen to your artists, they sing, and what I'm hearing is their voice. It's not Pro Tools, right? It's not fabrications on the computer. And there are others out there who shall remain nameless, right? There are others out there that pride themselves with all these audiophile releases, and yet they're all processed through the computer, right? And I'm like, okay, how does this make any sense? So you're trying to create the most pure audiophile recording you can, but you're jamming your vocals and everything through Pro Tools and auto-tune and all that stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And then you're cutting a record out of it. What's the point? Right?
Well, okay. Let me just get to the finding the talent. So just a quick aside here. Of those 3 singers you mentioned, the only one I really discovered on YouTube was Vanessa. I saw YouTube of her performing live. But Jacintha was introduced to me by an old friend, and Aisyah was introduced to me by Vanessa. You know, so he said, "You got to record her. She's got a really good voice." You know, and so, but let me address your question. And I have to make a bit of a confession here. I don't think it's a secret. It's in the liner notes of the Aisyah. You know, I mean, there is no analog recording in Singapore available.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we ended up having to use Pro Tools. Okay.
Right.
But I don't use Pro Tools the way most record producers use it. It's Pro Tools High Def HD 2496. And I absolutely, I see the attraction of it. It's seductive, immense control on everything. You can do everything. Yeah. Let me tell you, when we have to punch in something on the 30 IPS 2-track, 24-track 2-inch, it's a laborious and cumbersome, process. First you got to go and find the correct spot on the reel. So the assistant engineer has to come in, and he's got all these charts, and he's got to find the correct counter numbers, and you got to rewind it, and you got to hit it correctly, and then everything's got to be aligned, and you got to play back and forth, and you got to rewind everything. It all looks cool, and the musicians love to take video of it, but it is slow and cumbersome. But I think if you want to record somebody, musicians, vocals in the most natural fashion, even when you have really good, and I've heard files that have been played to me by like a great engineer like Alan Sides at an audio show, because Alan has a speaker line, so he sometimes demos and he's played stuff to me, and it really sounds good. Okay. But in general, you have to be with Pro Tools. You have to take a minimalist approach. Okay. So for Aisyah, we kept basically some of the same things. The same approach, even though it's a different engineer that we use for all the other analog recordings that we've done in LA. Okay. So we use very little processing. There's some processing on, like, there's a track, Smile, that Aisyah did on that record, and there's a kind of a kick drum effect that comes in right after the instrumental bridge, and we put some processing into that to give it a little more of an echo, and the sound required, like, it's not natural ambience, it's electronic, okay? But it kind of works with the song, And she's much more, she's young, okay? She's in her mid-20s, okay? So it was, we had to search for songs. And to be fair, I mean, she really wanted to do Walk on the Wild Side. She actually wanted to do some tracks by Motley Crue on the album. We ended up doing the sort of hard rock version of Knocking on Heaven's Door instead.
Which is fantastic, by the way. I think this whole album, this is it right here, double gatefold, 45 RPM. I have to say, even with the revelation that you guys use Pro Tools on this, it sounds absolutely fantastic. I've played it through and through several times, and I gotta say, I think you have a winner on your hand. I mean, I really think she's exceptional.
Yeah, she's really got a good voice. She's got range. Nice quality to the voice. Okay? It's very listenable. Okay. The other thing is, like, because we were not working in LA in a big room, like Ocean Way or Hanson or Sunset Sound or Capitol or any of the big studios that we worked in. You don't have big studios in Singapore because real estate is through the roof here. Okay. So we had to use smaller room, had high ceilings, but the engineer and I discussed it. We listened to some of the earlier, the Vanessa albums and stuff, and he didn't think he could replicate it. So we went for a slightly different approach. It's more kind of, I don't know, like slightly more spread out, kind of a sound. And basically, I think the arrangements don't quite, the arrangements are meant to really just play second fiddle to her voice, okay?
Yeah.
And they, apart from knocking, there isn't really a major guitar solo on it, unlike with Vanessa's albums where, Tim Pierce takes plenty of solos, especially on that Led Zeppelin album, So slightly different approach there to kind of match the recording technology that we were using here in Singapore,
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, obviously it makes sense, right? I mean, you use the tools that you have available at your disposal to create the music that you can create, right? One thing that I think is very interesting is going back to Vanessa, is the incredible range that she has, in my opinion, of covering a multitude of genres. You go from, the soul infused Use Me, right? Double LP still available, of course. And then I remember you were emailing me and you said, hey, I've got something I'm working on with Vanessa that's going to be knock your socks off amazing. And I was like, what is it? And you're like, she's going to be doing covers of Led Zeppelin. And I was like, wait, what? Seriously? That's crazy. Wow. And then, of course, this record came out. And I have to say, it is one of my favorite records that you produced, that you made, that Vanessa is on. I play this very often. And I have to say, even at first where I was like, wait, because obviously we all know, if someone comes out and says, hey, they're going to do Led Zeppelin covers, you're like, oh my God, what's that going to sound like, right? But this is truly fantastic. And talk a little bit about this record.
Okay, yeah. I think, we had talked, Vanessa and I, about, what to do for the second album. I'm not quite sure how we ended up deciding on the Led Zeppelin stuff, except that we did, and she was pretty gung-ho to do it. And the one thing we did agree upon when we approached this Led Zeppelin project was that we would try not to make it just straight imitation type covers. There's a lot of cover bands for Led Zeppelin. A lot of them, have really big followings on YouTube, and they have, big numbers, etc., etc. Okay, but they basically just follow whatever it was that the original band did. And I think we tried to do different stuff. Okay?
Absolutely.
The only thing, I'm trying to think back. So, for example, like when the Levee breaks, everybody's expecting that big John Bonham kick drum in solo intro, and we kind of went back. It's an old blues song, so Tim does this slide thing on it, and it's more to the bluesy rootsy side, and we did kind of things like that throughout. So Immigrant Song, the tempo is like down significantly.
Yes.
And then we also do a little tricky little thing. We have that little pause at the end of the slow tempos. Yeah. And then the band comes back in and they rock out, you know?
Yeah.
And then we did just a pure acoustic version of Whole Lotta Love.
Yes.
That I threw a lot of people, because nobody does acoustic versions of Whole Lotta Love.
Yeah.
But we threw in the bonus track, and that's a full rock out, and let me just add, if you want to listen to that full rock version, you got to buy the LP, because it's not out. It's not on the SACD.
Yeah.
I just kind of decided I'd do that.
Yeah. No, hey, look, I think it's great that you threw that in as a bonus. The album and the musicians you got first rate. You mentioned Kelter on drums, right?
Kelton on drums,
Yeah,
yeah, and he's
yeah,
great on that Led Zeppelin. He really
yeah.
hammering
Ocean
away on
Way. You guys were running this at Ocean Way, or
that was at Ocean Way, yeah,
yeah,
that was at Ocean Way.
which is of course an institution in
And,
LA.
yeah, and we got the big studio there. I think it's Studio A. We got the big room there,
Yeah,
and that's a big room because I can tell you, the drum room in that studio is probably bigger than the studio that I recorded Aisyah's pearls in. Okay.
that's great.
Yeah, and look, Ocean Way. Actually, it's called United Recording now.
Yeah.
Alan sold the studio.
Yeah.
It's still got some of the best rooms, in LA, if not, the US.
Yeah.
Great there.
Yeah.
And my thing is, I try to pick the best studios available because I'm not sure how much longer some of these legendary places are going to be around,
Yeah.
And here's the thing, it's not just the rooms, it's the boards, the consoles.
Yeah.
They have these incredible boards. Some of them are Neve and some are SSL. And they, they're the ones that that's the reason why a lot of, not me, I'm just a small timer, but some of the biggest names in the business go to these rooms because it's a combination, the sound of the room and the board.
Yeah.
The board gives a very good sound.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of again pivoting back to sound quality, Bernie Grunman, his fanatical approach to mastering, and really milking the last squintilla of performance out of a recording. You obviously have access to anyone you want, right? But you keep coming back to Bernie. What's your relationship there with him, if you can elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's been so many years.
Yeah.
So I'm considered one of his established long-term clients, and you get certain advantages and benefits from being there for a long time. But it's beyond that. I mean, Bernie's like a pal.
Yeah.
And I don't really have to be there anymore because he knows the label, he knows all the artists, he's cut everything, right? So I don't have to be there looking over his shoulder or anything. He knows what to do. In fact, I'll make a confession here, Danny. I mean, most of the time when I actually attend a mastering session at Bernie's, we rarely talk about the music. We're talking espresso, man.
I love it. That's right.
He's an espresso fanatic, and I'm kind of as well. So we talk about machine, grinders, the blends,
That's awesome.
I'm still paying for the time, but it's all espresso time.
And the music's running in the background. And you
don't actually, unless it's in the middle of a cut.
Sure.
Where there's nothing going on, or we're taking a break, but it's like, let's say, we just finished cutting a lacquer.
Yeah.
He's just autographed it and he's about to change the tapes.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about espresso, and what are the good bars, espresso places in LA and Hollywood, and the teens and stuff like that, and
I love
he's
it.
part of this Hollywood, he knows other record producers.
Yeah, of course.
So
he's a legend,
right?
man.
I mean, that's part of your introduction to your SonicFlare videos,
Right.
So you should understand.
Yeah.
But
one thing that always comes up, right? And of course, with the boom of records and more sales and more elaborate packaging and all that, there's buzzwords galore floating around, right? Half speed mastered, direct metal mastering, 45 RPM, 180 gram, 200 gram, cut from the original analog tapes, all the stuff that used to mean something back in the day, right?
Mhm.
Today has become part and parcel of anyone slapping a hype sticker on a record, and half speed mastered at Abbey Road sounds like shit, right? And you're like, who cares if it's half speed mastered? It could be a third speed mastered. It'll still sound like dog poop.
Yeah.
What's your feeling and what's your take on all these buzzwords that have been floating around and that have really sort of gained prominence over the last 5 years of this business?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I'm being very frustrated with this kind of thing going on, but it goes back way beyond 5 years for me, because this is a strategy, the use of buzzwords with a lot of digital audiophile stuff that comes out in Asia, in Hong Kong, Singapore, Bangkok,
Okay.
Taiwan. You know, somebody licenses some stuff by assorted female vocalists, stuff like that, and they go and master it somewhere, who knows where.
Yeah.
But they say 2496, 24192, and then they do a deal with a local hi-fi hardware dealer. I don't know, whatever cable he carries, whatever hardware, and they slap those logos on it. And they say, you know, super ultra audiophile, you know, super duper, you know.
Yeah.
And this is very much a established and long-standing marketing tactic. It frustrates the hell out of me.
Yeah.
As it does other producers and labels who actually go to the effort and trouble of really making sure that, you know, we are really going for a good mastering and a good pressing, good tape source, good source. You don't have to necessarily be analog tape, yeah, good digital sources as well, but actually taking time and trouble to track them down and use them, okay? Too many people just use the buzzwords now, you know, and nobody checks. You know, it's a lot of it's just in the packaging these days, and you know, I guess that's just, you know, the world we live in right now.
Yeah,
you know?
I know. Well, the sad part is that it takes the meaning and drops it to the lowest common denominator, right? I mean, I have some, you know, old Super Nautilus half-speed mastered records that actually sound phenomenal, right? Compared to the regular standard speed cut record. And you're like, wow, I can really hear that difference, right? And today you put on some of these half-speed mastered records that are out there, and you're like, my God, you know, did anyone even listen to this? What difference does it make, right?
Yeah, you know, that I think you hit it on the nail right there. You see, I think there are lots and lots of companies, big labels, small labels, indie labels, individuals, entrepreneurs, where they can see that there's a market.
Yeah.
They can see that the buck to be made, and they jump in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But listen, look at One Step, for example. One Step requires somebody in the process of the producing side, the label side, who's going to sit down and listen to dozens and dozens and dozens of test pressings.
Yeah.
And he's got to listen to them on a system that's going to reveal that lower noise floor, that additional detail, that extra wide soundstage.
Yeah.
And believe me, I've been to a lot of record companies for licensing purposes, and I can see that these people do not have access to, you know, the kind of sound systems that would be able to reveal what are the benefits. So, you know, when they get all their, I wonder who does the TP analysis and evaluation for some of these big record companies. But to be fair, I don't think any of the major labels are doing One Steps because those have been licensed to people like Mobile Fidelity and Analog Productions, and hopefully ORG at some stage. We've got some One Step title applications in with the majors, you know, but it's, you know, I do think we need to be, well, I guess the thing about this ties back a little to the whole One Step process now. Yeah. Because if you're doing like a one-step title and you were going to guarantee like 10,000 pieces, okay, between 500 to 1,000 per stamper, that's a lot of stampers. Sorry, yeah, that's a lot of stampers that need to be cut.
Yeah.
All right. So each lacquer produces one stamper. So, and if you're doing double 45, that's, you know, 4 stampers aside.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're going to have to hire somebody full time.
Yeah.
And equip a listening room with decent equipment and playback.
Yeah.
So that they sit there and listen to every single one, because you're going to release all of those one steps and they're all going to have to be evaluated. Every single test pressing is going to have to be evaluated. Yeah. And I do it myself because we're not doing 10,000 of a one-step title. Okay.
Sure.
We do 3-step on most of our titles, except I've done a couple of 1-steps, and those are much smaller quantities. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you do test pressing analysis, like I said, I send them out to a few people, but I personally listen to 2-3 sets. Yeah. Myself. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So imagine having to do that for a record where, you know, with 10,000 and 500, you're gonna have to do like 20 times 4. That's 80.
Yeah, that's insanity.
80 sides. 80 sides. Okay?
Yeah, it's insanity.
And you're gonna listen to 3 of them. Yeah. Say 2 to 3 times. Let's say three different test pressings. Yeah. That's 240, man. Yeah. Yeah. I know. Multiply that by all the albums that you want to do. Exactly. That's what I said. It's like
it's a full-time job.
Really seriously doing one-step releases, you've got to have a full-time TP evaluator on your payroll. Okay. Yeah. Because and he's got to like whatever genre of music you listen to. Yeah. Yeah. If you don't like opera, it's gonna be like he's gonna have a nervous breakdown after like the 10th time. Okay.
I didn't even think about that. You're absolutely right. It's like, oh my God, what am I listening to? I can't listen to this shit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody's done a classical one-step, you know?
Yes.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Maybe
that's interesting.
Take a look at that.
Yeah.
You know, because we definitely had some big titles. La Film Malgade would be one, and España would be another.
Yeah, you know, of course. Yeah, España, that would I'd get that in a heartbeat.
But
so what's that?
One thing I was going to say is that you know, a kind of a building up from all this stuff I'm talking about, you know, supply line problems, you know, turnaround times, you know, test pressing, waiting times, all of this stuff. Anybody who's in the LP market seriously, say, you know, prices are going in one direction only. Okay. Yeah. They're headed up. Yeah. Yeah. They are, because you know, people who have been forced to search far and wide for test pressing, for pressing capacity. Yeah. And if they're forced to go overseas, well, all that freight and time has to be, you know, factored into your final price. Yeah. You know? So. Yeah. And the other thing that worries me a little bit is how, you know, all these pressing plants are like working overtime to meet demand. I don't know. These are really old machines. Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, they have a expiration date. Yeah. Even if you keep cannibalizing, go searching for, you know, machines that are no good but can supply you with spare parts. Yeah. There is a finite timeline. Okay, there's that company in Europe that's making the new machines that are beginning to filter out. They're not cheap. I think I read on somewhere they're like 300,000 per machine. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. So even if you're one of these small guys and you want 2 machines, 600 grand right there. Okay. Amazing. And there's no point, honestly, Danny, there's no point having pressing capacity if you don't do plating. Okay. Yeah. Because it's just going to get held up somewhere else. You're just going to get in somebody else's queue. Yeah. And plating is tricky. It's a lot of toxic chemicals involved. You know? Yeah. So,
crazy times. Crazy times. Ying, this was absolutely fantastic. It's such a great insight to get stuff directly from you. And you're really like the one of the veterans in the industry of having been around it for, you know, gosh, what, since 92, 93, when you guys launched Classic Records, which today seems like forever and a half ago.
It seems like a long time ago.
It really does. It really does.
Well, it's over a century, you know.
I know, that's crazy. We do have one more thing to do before we that's right. Yeah. That's right. So to those tuning in, if you follow me on Instagram, and obviously I strongly suggested you do, because there's contests like this coming up all the time, we actually picked a random winner, or hopefully a random winner, for a random question that I'm going to be asking Ying. And so here we go. Drum rolls, please. The random question is, and here we go. What is your honest opinion on half-speed mastered records?
I think the answer lies in the fact that I've never done it.
That's an honest answer.
Bernie isn't a big fan.
Okay.
And so I take my guidance from a guy who started cutting LPs 50 years ago.
Yeah.
For contemporary records. Okay.
Yeah.
So been through all the changes. He's we have discussed half speed cutting, and he basically wasn't that excited about it. So
yeah.
I defer to him, you know.
Yeah.
It's not something that I have in any way experienced a sense that there's this, you know, pent up demand for me to cut groove note at half speed, you know.
Yeah.
I do plan to redo my best-selling titles on the groove note label on one step.
Yeah.
Okay. But you know, there's a lot of options. You know, going back to that thing about doing these ultra deluxe packages. Right. You know, we could do one step. We could use the RTI Ultra Vinyl, which I haven't done yet. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely out there as a possibility. Yeah. And it's very tempting because you use that ultra vinyl formulation from RTI. Yeah. You can jack your price up. You know? Yeah. You know, the difference between, what was it, mobile, regular, one-step pressing is $100. If you buy one that's
25 now,
125.
Yeah.
Know?
Yeah.
And
I think the new one
has his 200-gram profile. You know, there's all kinds of platforms and formats that you can exploit to give a certain amount of premium and charge more for it, you know. So for me, the most likely upgrade that I can see and that I can hear is definitely one step. Okay. Yeah. And one step is, you know, it's the logic of the process is there. You go from 3-step to 1-step. You eliminate these stages in the plating, and it clearly lowers your sound floor on the final pressing. Okay. Yeah. And with the lower sound floor, you know, vinyl is all about getting rid of, like, intrusive sounds in the playback. And if you lower the noise floor, you're going to hear more.
You're going to, absolutely.
You can get better dynamics.
Yeah.
Because you have a lower noise.
Absolutely.
Floor. So one step I cannot say, same with 45 RPM. You know, it's like the signal that's traced on the groove at 33 is shorter than it is at 45. That signal's traced over a greater physical area. Therefore, it's easier for your style to track it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so you know, there are logical advantages that you can see. I can definitely hear the lower noise floor on a one-step pressing, you know, but you know, things like certain kinds of profiles on the edge of the vinyl, you know, things like that. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Ying, so this was absolutely fantastic.
That was a sufficient answer for your random questioner.
Yes, The winner gets a brand new copy of the just released Aisyah album, and I'll hold it up once again. I will DM you to protect the innocent. I'm not going to reveal their name online here, but I will be DMing them, and I'll get you their address. And congratulations to our winner, Ying.
And Danny, by the way, I think what I'll do, if you can check in if you're a winner, but if he's open to it and willing to wait a couple extra weeks or so, I'll grab a copy here and get Aisyah to sign it.
Oh my goodness. Holy cow. Are you serious? Wow. That's awesome. Yep. Okay. Deal.
Okay.
I love it. Fantastic.
So it'll have to be in gold ink though, because I think
yes,
and black. So
that's awesome.
Gold or silver ink.
Wow.
Gold to go with the type.
That's right. Special bonus edition signed by Aisyah. Yeah. Up and coming superstar. Love it. Ying, this was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. It was great seeing you and connecting with you again. It's been entirely too long. And I definitely can't wait to see you in Newport or Irvine, hopefully in January next year, 2022. Crazy.
Yeah, it's coming up fast.
I know.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day and a great weekend, Ying.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. And look forward to seeing you in LA as well.
Likewise. Okay? Awesome, Ying. Great. Thank you, man.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.